Exile? Extermination? Or perhaps a new empire? What is the future for Putin's chef, Yevgeny Prigozhin? What happened to the chief of staff, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who fell out of favor after a short coup? Observers said the events of June 24 created chaos whether the Kremlin dismissed the commander or not. Putin's former advisor, Sergei Markov, said he was not sure what would happen to 62-year-old Prigozhin, the former commander of Wagner's Special Military Division, PMC, forces, but revealed that the only thing the other side could see was time. Has the opportunity to become president of Wagner Group, a small group in Belarus. He also had the opportunity to become president of Wagner Group around the world and signed agreements with African and Asian leaders. It has an advertising feature. According to Markov, Prigozhin's best option is to move his operations outside of Russia, since other countries recognize the military strength of the Wagner Group and may cooperate with it. A lot of things depend on his behavior and thoughts. He is unpredictable and very strange, Markov said in an interview with Star. On the evening of June 24, PMC soldiers captured the Southern Military District headquarters in Rostov-on-Don, Russia, claiming that the Russians were armed. Forces launched a missile attack on Camp Wagner. Both the Russian Ministry of Defense and the FSB denied the allegations, but the move has become a challenge for the Kremlin. The rebellion was suppressed by an agreement, the details of which have not yet been determined, brokered by Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko, a confidant of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Markov says that Lukashenko's role in the negotiations is important not because the Belarusian president is a good negotiator, but because Putin is too angry to talk to Putin himself. Talk to Prigozhin. Putin could have killed him and part of his army, but he did not want blood near Moscow, so he decided to intervene. About Putin's good fortune in Africa, said Elliot Tepper, without assessing the fatal outcome. We should find out soon. Tepper is a distinguished fellow at Carleton University's Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. It was reported that Prigozhin agreed to go to Belarus with some of his soldiers, while the mercenaries who did not participate in the fighting signed a contract with the Ministry of Defense. Lukashenko confirmed that Prigozhin was in Belarus in June. Then on Thursday the warlord's St. Petersburg and his soldiers were in the field camp. The Wagner incident is another Russian mystery, but the truth is that no one knows the whole deal to stop the attacks, even as negotiations continue, Tepper said. To his estate in St. he went to Petersburg to collect goods such as cash and weapons. Only if you go back to St. Petersburg, sir, that would be tantamount to suicide. Putin wants to kill him. After all, this is where Putin and his colleagues at the FSB live. It is surprising that Prigozhin has not been threatened with punishment since the day of the revolution, said J. Paul Good, author of Europe, Russia and Europe. Macmillan Chair. It's hard to believe that Putin backed off from his remarks about Prigozhin's attack, calling it backstabbing and treason. There is still a risk of those who panic leaving Putin. Prigozhin seems to be keeping a low profile, which is likely to continue as long as Wagner continues to be useful to Russia's war effort, But perhaps Putin doesn't have much to hide, so he doesn't run into trouble, said. Even if the protest is not seen as a challenge to Putin's rule, not punishing Prigozhin will spur others to a real challenge, something the Kremlin cannot afford, he explained. Reuters reported on Thursday that Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, told reporters in late June that the Kremlin would not follow the soldiers' movements and had neither the ability nor the desire. Markov believes that Prigozhin is not liked by the Russian elite, and the Kremlin does not see him as a threat. Prigozhin is not controlled by the military. Although there are several hundred good soldiers around him, he has no political influence. The elites fear Putin. But those who fight for Wagner are only considered heroes. And Markov, who said that they should serve the country after Russia's war in Ukraine, he added that the special room joined Prigozhin as the Russian army could not control Ukraine. A former Kremlin advisor said that a large part of Russian society, including the elite, understands that the protests are about the weak Russian administration and Putin's intransigence. The Kremlin should clarify and strengthen its position on the Prigozhin issue. According to Markov, while the Wagnerian mercenaries still refuse to submit to the military bureaucracy, the Russian police will find a way to get them to sign an agreement. Ministry of Defense. Chapter: Who is Prigozhin? 62-year-old Yevgeny Prigozhin is known for his long-standing animosity with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, and for criticizing the Russian military leader for his defeat in Ukraine. Prigozhin was sentenced to 12 years in prison for robbery and assault in Russia in 1981. After getting out of prison, he opened a restaurant in St. Petersburg in the 1990s. During this period, he became friends with Putin, who was the prime minister of the time. Over the next few years, Prigozhin opened a catering company, won a competition on the strength of his Kremlin connections, and became known as Putin's chef.